Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
The two giants stared one another down. Giant snake against giant sand-dog/raccoon. One of these behemoths was going to lose, and each one was confident that it was going to be the other that lost. They both had a respective human nearby for the cause. Manda had Naruto, who was riding atop of him full in his Jinchuriki cloak, whilst Gaara was inside of the protective sand healing the injuries that he had suffered at the hands of the blonde-haired boy. It was a single genin soldier and a summon to go up against one of the bijou. On paper this was a high mismatch. Like a lot of things though, plans and judgment go out the window once the first kunai is thrown. Use one of your futon techniques, Naruto. Manda called out in an authoritative tone of voice as he prepared his own technique. Producing a substance different from saliva in his mouth, Manda waited a second so that Naruto could go through the hand seals before spitting out poison. Ninja Arts, Poison Mist Jutsu. Wind release, violent wind palm, Naruto called out as it made using the technique easier in his mind. The combination of the wind and the poison made the attack impossible to dodge as it was so widespread. It would have been almost impossible anyway due to the size of Shikaku and its immobile nature. Angry at having to take the hit, Shikaku launched out with his own technique. That was the wind release, drilling air bullet jutsu. Having the same jutsu in his bag of tricks as well as the backing of the Kyuubi in this fight, it meant that Naruto was able to go toe-to-toe with the attack and prevent it from hitting either himself or Manda. Naruto was really thanking his training in making his hand seals combinations that much faster. Getting angrier and angrier as time went by, the Ichibi launched its tail towards the two in the hopes of wrapping them up and performing such a large-scale sand release, sand waterfall funeral. Thanks to the agile nature of his body type, Manda was able to dodge the incoming attack. Not only was he able to do that, he was also able to dodge it in a way that allowed him to wrap his grand size around the tail in a constricting fashion most pythons. Jumping off of the head of Manda, Naruto launched himself as he ran along the tail that was wrapped by the king of the jungle. Going through the hand seals, Naruto launched the most powerful jutsu that he had in his arsenal at the Ichibi. With the backing of the Kyuubi behind him, it allowed Naruto to fully realize the jutsu's potential as it was now classified as a high A-ranked wind ninjutsu. Wind release, pressure damage. Naruto yelled out as the wind created from this jutsu were enough to rip through the softer sand of Shikaku's front left foot. Howling in pain as it was something that he definitely did not like one bit, Shikaku tried a different method to defeat his opponents as the ones he was currently using were clearly not working. Reverting his tail to the form without chakra, Shikaku then quickly tried to re-wrap it around the form of Manda and crush his internals through his Jinchuriki's favorite technique. Being someone who was able to react quickly in hard situations, Manda did his own counterattack. Using the Snake Clan's secret jutsu, Shedding Skin Jutsu, Manda dodged the attack by burrowing himself underground. Not stopping there, Manda plowed his way through the ground and popped his tail right in front of Shikaku as bait. As the bijou was focused on the appendage in front of him, the real Manda came up from out of the ground, wrapped his body around Shikaku. As this was happening, Manda once again breathed a substance out of his mouth onto the Ichibi. Unlike the first time, which was done via the usage of poison, this time it was done by using his acidic glands. These were designed to deal large amounts of fast-acting damage to opponents who had even the toughest of defenses. For someone like Shikaku who had the ultimate defense, things like this were not wants, they were needs. Seeping through the sand, which essentially was his skin for the near foreseeable future, Shikaku raged at the pain that he was feeling as he was someone who did not like the feeling at all. The one-tailed demon was getting increasingly frustrated with this turn of events. He expected the fight between himself and his two opponents to be much more of a one-sided contest in his favor. Instead of that, it was going in the complete opposite direction. The sand demon wasn't even trading blows with Manda, he was instead just receiving them and hoping for an opportunity to strike. With the sand that was around him, the Ichibi no Shikaku, who was getting angrier and angrier as the fight dragged on, decided that it was time to switch from predator to all-out berserker. Using the sand that made up his body, the Achibi tried to wrap Manda, who was already wrapping him up with the snake's body in a constricting fashion. Sensing the danger that he was in, Manda did his best to escape unharmed. That was not to be, however, as the sand demon was just too quick for the giant purple snake. Using the coarse sand at his disposal, Shikaku managed to land a severe grazing on the skin of the Snake Clan leader. This was enough to draw a substantial amount of blue blood from the reptile. Grunting in anger from having taken the injury, Manda went back to where Naruto was via the underground and popped up to help out his summoner. Looking ahead to where his opponent was, Manda wanted to know what the next attack that the Achibi was going to use. Eyes widening in surprise as even the king of the jungle could not hold back his fear when he saw which jutsu the sand demon was preparing on using. It was none other than the tailed beast ball. Knowing what was to come if he even got hit by a fraction of what the sphere contained, Manda quickly set about telling Naruto about the situation he was in. Naruto, in terms of ranking jutsus, the one that the Achibi is just about to use would be a rank above S-class if there ever was one. There is no way to defend against the raw brutality that the menacing ball provides. All you can do is slow it down and get out of the way. If you try anything other than that, you will no doubt be reduced to the mere molecules that make up your body. Taking that news into consideration, Naruto though knew that he had to at least give it his all when it came to defending his village against the threat in front of him. Manda-sama, dive underground and appear behind the bijou. I'm going to use a jutsu that you taught me, which I know that you never planned on me using anytime soon. Seeing the look on the face of his clan leader, Naruto flinched as he knew that he was not going to hear the end of this conversation. Whilst Manda cared about Naruto, he did not care about the village hidden in the leaves one bit. He wouldn't have cared if it burnt to the ground the very next day. To Naruto though, it was his home. He would do anything to protect the place that gave birth to him from invaders. In the mind of the Snake Clan leader, Manda thought that Naruto was still suffering some of the Stockholm Syndrome that he had been suffering from when he first offered the boy the opportunity to join the Snake Clan. With a sigh at how stubborn Naruto was, Manda dived down into the ground to protect himself from the incoming jutsu, as he knew that no matter what he said, Naruto would not listen. The blonde-haired boy was using instincts rather than logical thought at the moment. It was something that he would have to break the boy from doing. Ino, watching on, could see the raw chakra that the one tail was producing. She could even feel it. Her senses were on fire. Naruto! Get out of the way! She shouted in hysterics. It fell on deaf ears though, as Naruto was so engrossed in his fight with Shikaku. Exhaustion was running through his body and Naruto knew that he didn't have much more to give at his current level. The pain that was coursing through his body was enough to make a civilian drop to the ground and pass out. The blonde-haired boy though knew that he would have to step it up a notch if he even wanted a hope in saving this battle. I have to protect everyone. I have to protect Ino. As her name came in his mind, her image popped up and gave him the drive to draw on even more chakra from the Kyuubi, causing him to grow a second tail. The influx of power that he was feeling from this was amazing. The feelings of hatred, power and wanting to cause destruction almost blindsided Naruto into releasing more power than he could safely handle. Even the level that he was at right now was a little too much, but some boundaries had to be pushed if the outcome outweighed the risk. Crouching down even lower as he was getting into a stance that would make it easier for him to transfer into a four-tailed state, Naruto started going through hand seals so that he could unleash his ultimate defensive jutsu. The power of the Kyuubi was not only affecting Naruto's physical state as his raw power, speed and chakra reserve shot up dramatically, but it also affected his voice as he spoke in a low, guttural tone of voice. Snake Clan's secret jutsu, Triple Rashomon. The snake summoner called out as he pushed just about all of his chakra into the jutsu. It was a battle between the jutsu of Naruto and the jutsu of the Shikaku to see which would rise first. Gate 1 popped up. Gate 2 popped up. The same time that gate number 2 popped up, the Achibi swallowed the giant mass of chakra. Finally, as gate 3 was coming out of the ground, Naruto jumped to the side as fast as he could. It was a good thing too, as the Uzumaki-born boy narrowly saved himself from getting killed. What Naruto did not stop though was sustaining yet another injury due to the enemy. This time it was getting a chunk of his calf muscle completely blown apart by the strongest attack of the bijou. A massive scream ruptured through the air as Naruto was now hobbling on one leg. Not even the ever-proud boy could prevent himself from letting loose a few tears due to the pain that he was in at that very point in time. With the amount of pain that he was in at the moment, the blonde-haired boy didn't dare look back to see how much damage Konoha had suffered. Whatever had happened would only be images that would wreck his brain and make him lose focus. Naruto! Ino screamed at the top of her lungs. Tears were forming down her face. She had seen the damage the jutsu caused and how he did his best to try and save the village by blocking the attack. She knew he could have easily dodged the attack but chose not to, as that would have left Konoha wide open and vulnerable. Seeing the devastation of what the jutsu had caused filled her with fear and dread for Naruto's life. Subconsciously, she projected her chakra, which carried her emotions along with it, to Naruto. "Please, Naruto, get up. Please. I hope you're okay." It was these words that gave Naruto the strength to manage to stand back up, albeit resting up against a tree. He could feel the emotions Ino was feeling, and the last thing he wanted to do was make her worry. It was an odd feeling, legitimately feeling the emotions of someone else. It was the rawest form of acknowledgement, seeing how much she cared for him. Mustering up some of the remaining strength that was remaining in his body, Naruto made several clones of himself to act as decoys. As this was happening, Naruto hid behind a tree and let the magic of the Kyuubi's chakra heal his injuries. The mind of Naruto was going at 100 miles a second, trying to conjure up a plan that would end this bloodshed and destruction. It was then that there was idea that started snowballing into something that he could work with. Yes, Naruto was confident that this was a plan that would definitely produce an outcome. The only question was whether or not if it would be in the blonde-haired boy's favor. Thanking the fact that he was much smaller in size compared to his summon partner, this gave him the time to not only prepare his next move, but it also gave him the time to heal from all of the injuries he had sustained up until this point. The healing power of the Kyuubi no Kitsune was truly remarkable. Due to having two tails of the vile chakra running through his body, Naruto was able to heal bodily parts in times that other could only dream of. What was a potential career-ending injury for some, it was only taken 1.5 minutes for Naruto's leg to reattach the muscle to the tendon. The harder part was recreating all of the muscle fibers from scratch. Without those meaty cords, Naruto would not be able to push off with any kind of force whatsoever. All that the blonde-haired boy could do was hope that Manda was able to hold off the Shikaku for long enough that he could surprise the bastard with an attack that would spell the end for the one-tailed beast. The way how the Serpent King was doing this was by burrowing underground, pooping up and firing his acids, and then once again going underground. It was a clear stall tactic, and there was not that much that the Shikaku could do about it. If he moved so that he could go and attack the Kyuubi brat, then the damned pesky snake would pop up and get a clear shot on him. Despite him being one of the tailed beasts that had a great defense, not even he could defend himself against the acids of Manda all that well. If Manda was able to get a direct hit on the Ichibi, then it would seriously set the beast back some time as it recovered. The other problem was that unlike some of the other bijou, the Ichibi was one that did not have any sensory powers like, say, the Kyuubi. It had to rely on its eyesight and its hearing, both of which weren't all that special. The constant vibrations that were felt through the ground weren't helping at all. It was too bad for Shikaku that Manda was the one directly responsible for those miniature shockwaves going through the ground. These were a form of defense mechanism employed by the giant snake, as it did this to disable any Doton-based sensory. Manda didn't know whether or not the Ichibi was capable of such feats, but Manda did not want to risk it. If there was anyone more grateful for what the Serpent King was doing than Naruto, then the blonde-haired boy definitely wanted to meet them. Said boy was sitting down inside a nearby bush as best as his surroundings would allow him. Pulling on the dregs of the energy running through his body, Naruto had a grimace on his face as he ran at the underbelly of the Ichibi no Shikaku. Manda wasn't a great sensor by any means. He was only just as good as the hardened Chunin at the skill. Because though that Naruto was flaring so much of the Kyuubi's chakra, the giant purple snake knew where Naruto had positioned himself. Even in the small amount of time that he knew Naruto on a personal level, Manda knew that Naruto was capable of producing brilliantly thought-out plans on the spot. Even on occasion were these better than some of the plans that the best strategists from the clan could produce with time to think things through. Thanks to the efforts of Manda and his acid spitting, Naruto was able to run undetected and get into the best position possible for his plan. That was right underneath the belly of the beast. Not even Manda could believe that Naruto would do something as stupid as stand beneath one of the tailed beasts. Maybe the bloodlust of the Kyuubi's chakra going through him had affected the boy more than he had first thought? Using nearly all of the chakra that Naruto had going through his pathways at the time, he was hopefully going to end this fight with this jutsu. Futon, Atsugai. Wind release, pressure damage. Thanks to all of the chakra passing through, Naruto was able to supercharge the winds that were generated from this jutsu. Using one tail of the Kyuubi's chakra allowed Naruto to produce a mid-A rank jutsu. This was in comparison to when he used only his own chakra and managed to create a B-rank jutsu. If only he had better control over his element. However, when Naruto made the jutsu with two tails of chakra running through him, the results of such jutsu had not been tested yet. The rule involving jutsus that haven't been tested out yet was to never use them in battle. There is a slight exception though when it came to Jinchuriki. If all you were doing was just increasing the power of the jutsu, then you could possibly get away with it as long as it wasn't a jutsu that you exhale through the mouth. Only time would tell in seeing just how effective that Naruto was just about to use. Luckily there was very little to no waiting time at all. Thrusting his hands from his chest after gathering all of the chakra that he had available to him at the time, Naruto unleashed the jutsu. The damage was instant, so too was the pain that the Ichibi felt. The tearing winds collided with softer underbelly of the demon. Normally these winds were white, but thanks to the type of chakra that was powering it as well as the fact that it was being overloaded, there was now a slight tint of red marring each of the blades of wind. Not even something that was as feared as the Shikakuas would be able to defend against the attack well. Chunks of sand started falling from the beast as Naruto had to dodge with his still injured leg, which was harder than he wished for it to be. Since Naruto did not have great control over the jutsu, it was not a controlled and directed attack. It turned out to be a widespread damage jutsu that destroyed anything that it came into contact with. The legs of the Ichibi no Shikaku were arguably the beast's strongest points of defense. They held up better than the stomach but still could not support the incredible weight as well as sustain the damage from Naruto Uzumaki. What this meant was that as time went by and despite the fact that the winds were dying down, more and more chakra compressed sand was falling down above Naruto. Being in the position that it was in thanks its host being so weak from injuries, the sand demon did its best to preserve its chance in living in the outside world for as long as possible. To do this, it kept Gaara as far down as possible in the sand whilst still allowing him a pocket of air to travel to his unconscious body, allowing him to breathe. The place in which the body of the red-haired boy had been placed was in the center of Shikaku's stomach. Due to the great amount of sand that was falling off of the body of the Ichibi, Gaara's position was becoming more and more compromised as he started sinking in the sand. This was happening because of the lack of density that was once there to support his weight. It eventually got to the point where the lower part of his left leg was sticking out of the sand, allowing it to be seen. Whilst there was still some wind going around at the time, it was only a large gust of wind, nothing that would be able to cause any damage unless it was freezing cold. Snakes in general do not have good eyesight. That was why Manda, the king of all serpents, was not able to see the small leg sticking out of the body of sand from how far away he was at the time. However, humans by comparison have much better eyesight than reptiles, and this compounded with his position allowed Naruto to spot the leg. Knowing what had to be done, Naruto lifted his hand onto the hilt of his sheathed Shikuto and jumped up into the air. The blonde-haired boy was fueled by all of the Kyuubi's chakra that was still running inside of him. Pulling out his blade and channeling wind chakra through it to make his job even easier, Naruto used both hands to generate even more force. Instead of what a lot of other shinobi would do in his position, Naruto did not simply just attack the leg that was visible. He did not even attack around the body for a potential kill shot. Instead, what the blonde-haired boy did was cut a large enough rectangle around the area that Gaara could potentially encompass from the position that his leg was in. Naruto was rewarded when the severe lack in pressure resulted in all of the sand that was inside the cut lines fell to the ground. As gravity was taking him back down to the ground, Naruto put his sword back in its sheath. The last thing that Naruto did was that he pulled on the leg of Gaara with enough force to make the red-haired boy get released from the grasp of the chakra-controlled sand. Then there was a single thought that entered the mind of Manda. What if Naruto did not know what it was that kept the Shikaku out in the open for so long? He wasn't going to take any chances. Despite not wanting to admit it, Manda was a bit rusty because he had not had to fight such a large-scale battle in such a long time. Going from doing nothing to then fighting one of the Bijus was certainly not one of the easiest tasks in the world of shinobis. Manda did not want to have to fight for any longer as his body was aching all over. What the giant snake wanted was rest and lots of it. Naruto! Wake the boy up! The reason why the Ichibi no Shikaku is dominant over that boy is because said boy is unconscious, so wake him up. As he was shaking Gaara, nothing was working. Nothing he did would work. Crap! What do I do? It was then in that moment the blonde couldn't help but chuckle. If this works, he muttered, lubing up one finger before shoving it in the ear of Gaara. It was the only place Gaara did not have sand armor. It was super effective. Slowly, due to the uncomfortable feeling of something wet inside his ear, Gaara started coming to the real world. As this was happening, all the red-haired boy could hear were the screams of the Ichibi no Shikaku. Said beast was obviously not at all happy with the fact that his time on the free world was cut short by something as degrading as a wet willy. The first thing that Gaara noticed was that he couldn't move his body at all. All of his chakra supply was depleted and the Sunagakure shinobi had a severe case of chakra exhaustion. For the first time in his life, Gaara was truly afraid. Without his chakra supply, he wasn't able to control any forms of his defense apart from the automatic part. That didn't work though, as Gaara did not have his gourd anywhere nearby. Without his defense mechanisms, Gaara was afraid that people would come and try to hurt him, just like what happened when he was younger. Panicking because of the predicament that he now found himself waking up to, Gaara instantly opened his eyes and was met with the face of his biggest enemy at this current point of time. That was Naruto Uzumaki, who had his sword drawn and pointing directly at his heart. If all that wasn't bad enough, the sound of the sand that made up Shikaku crumpling to the ground now that it had no chakra to support it made Gaara know that he had lost his first ever fight. With the panic and hyperventilation evident in his voice, Naruto listened to what Gaara had to say. "Nu. My existence will never be extinguished. It can't. There is no way that I will let it disappear." Hearing what the defeated shinobi had to say, it was painful for Naruto as it brought up memories that he wished he didn't have to remember once again. The pain of being alone isn't an easy thing to deal with, is it? The bittersweet smile that was on the face of Naruto didn't reassure Gaara one bit that his existence wasn't going to end soon. It's so soul-destroying seeing all of the people having friends and a caring family and wondering why is it that the things that you want the most, you can't have. Now I am not sure what the circumstances were surrounding you being forced into having this burden, but I do know that there are ways that you can escape the pain. That is what I did. When Naruto had finished saying what he had, Gaara couldn't help but face Naruto with all of his attention. He had gone through enough struggles in his life. Now normally, Gaara wouldn't have listened to the words of someone else with a grain of salt. This was because Gaara believed that people who were trying to teach him life lessons hadn't gone through all of the struggles that he had, thus not becoming as strong as him. It was only through battle that allowed for the psyche of Gaara to open up to other possible ways of getting stronger. There is only one thing that can cure the pain that we Jinchurikis feel. Only the love of others can make you feel whole. You need to find people that see you as Gaara, not as Shikaku. And when you find someone like that, only then will you gain the true strength in protecting what is important to you. As Naruto said this, the image of Ino was fresh in his mind. So too were her emotions. I will even be the first person who will look past that and become friends with the real Gaara, and I bet your brother and sister have always been there for you. I heard the way Temari spoke of you, wanting to protect you even if she is weaker than you. As Naruto said this, he pulled his sword back and allowed it to slide into its sheath. The next thing that he did was Naruto allowed for the demonic chakra running through him to subside. Before he reverted to his initial Jinchuriki form, Naruto noticed the telltale sign of a massive plume of smoke going off in the distance. Manda obviously knew that Naruto now had this fight under control and was going to heal his acquired injuries. With him not needed around any longer, the giant purple snake headed off home. The old Naruto might have been showing through, but it didn't matter to the blonde-haired boy. It could have also been the fact that he felt a ton of empathy for Gaara because he had been through the same type of upbringing. Manda would probably berate him for being so trusting and letting his guard down, but honestly, Naruto didn't care. In the words of Ino, it's not wrong to feel. He had been through so much as a Jinchuriki that when he saw another struggling through tough times, all he wanted to do was help out. All this put together meant that when Naruto dropped down to his initial Jinchuriki mode and without the adrenaline boost that it provided, Naruto was unable to hold onto consciousness as he fell flat on his stomach into the ground right next to Gaara. Before the unconscious body of Naruto fell down to the ground, he was gracefully caught. "I am so proud of you," Ino whispered and enveloped her arms around her favorite blonde. Surprising herself, she even bent down and kissed him on his forehead protector. Had he been awake she would never have done it, but for some reason, it just felt right. With Sakura. If there was one person who was embarrassed the most with their performance in the short attack on Konoha, then it was the pink-haired girl that was a part of Team 7. At least someone like her former rival Ino could boast about doing something for the village in its time of need. What could she say? When her Sasuke-kun needed her most, she yet again failed to even do anything remotely helpful. What didn't help the situation was that Sasuke had indeed suffered injuries from his fight with Gaara, none more so than the chakra exhaustion from having to use the Chidori often. XXX. There was nobody more shocked in the Battle of Konoha to see the large Summon King Manda out in the flesh. For an instant, the purple-haired Kunoichi believed that it was Orochimaru who was the person that had summoned Manda. If she was brutally honest with herself, she was terrified. For all of the confidence that she portrayed as a special jonin that wanted to kill her former sensei, Anko knew that she had a long way to go if she ever wanted to reach the same skill level of the Snake Sannin. To even contemplate going up against her former sensei, which was something that she no doubt wanted to do as well as fight Manda at the same time, it was quite daunting to put the situation lightly. However, Anko soon came to the realization that Orochimaru was not the person who was summoning Manda, as she could tell from the curse mark on her shoulder that he was in a totally different direction. This made Anko mad and jealous all at once. Mad that someone was so stupid enough to fall for the lies that Orochimaru had obviously fed them to join his quest for power. The jealousy came from the fact that even though she hated the man with a passion, there was quite a substantial point of her life was dedicated to nothing more than making the man happy. Hearing that there was someone else capable of summoning Manda made those feelings of inadequacy come back to the surface. Was I not good enough for you to teach me? What twisted words had Orochimaru used towards this person to make them so willing to attack Konoha with the use of a snake that demanded 100 sacrifices every time they were summoned? Just how screwed in the head were they that they would even turn to Orochimaru? Despite the fact that she had a job to do and that she had to protect all of the children who attended the Shinobi Academy, the purple-haired snake mistress couldn't help but look over her shoulder as she felt the most horrific chakra that she had ever felt before. To see that lining up against Manda was one of the bloody-tailed beasts was definitely not something that she expected to see. This was no more a fight between shinobi. It was now a fight between monsters of the largest scale that were going to go head-to-head with one another. The sounds of fighting going on in the background were enough to bring the woman back to reality and that there was a job that she needed to complete. The lives of children were resting on her shoulders and she didn't want to make them see the horrors that she had seen in her life. Getting her mind back on track, Anko noticed that her former classmate in the academy Irika Yumano was busily directing the kids into the safety zones inside the Hokage mountain. It was time for Anko Mitarashi to step up and complete the task that was assigned to her. Hopefully if she could put down a good performance, then she would be able to slightly change the opinions of the Konoha residents and that she wasn't just the snake bitch, she was Anko fucking Mitarashi. Knowing how her former sensei liked to coordinate his attacks, the special Jonin instinctively knew that there was going to be a group that was going to attack the people who could not defend themselves. It was a strategy to bring out the Konoha shinobi so that the real attack could get the ninjas trying to protect the civilians. She was not disappointed as Anko spotted the group of shinobi attempting to ambush the unsuspecting Academy Protection Unit. It seemed as if the ninjas that Orochimaru had picked out were quite weak and were pretty much just making up the numbers in the eyes of Anko, as they did not notice her when she hid with her chakra signature masked. Anyone who had a few years' experience would be able to figure this out. There should be at least one person in each patrol group who had some form of tracking and sensory ability. Coming up behind the enemy with them none the wiser, Anko threw 3-4 kunai at the 4-man group. 2 of them connected with their targets, which was the back of the neck. This instantly killed them without any hope of survival. This was even before they managed to turn around and try and defend themselves. It seemed that the other 2 were actually semi-competent shinobi, as they heard the sound of the incoming metal of death and managed to dodge the attack. What they did not expect, though, was for there to be a follow-up attack. Silently, Anko went through the hand signs and breathed out fire release, great fireball jutsu. The mental incantation helped out the purple-haired lady got her jutsu off in the general direction of where the enemy should be landing. Anko had predicted correctly, as her jutsu connected directly with the face of the Hokage ninja and burned his face severely. When the fire connected, the worst thing that the sound shinobi could have done, he did. That was that he panicked. He might have had a chance of escaping had he not panicked, but because he did, his life was already forfeit. Panicking in such a situation meant that what little oxygen was in his lungs was forced out his mouth. With fire needing oxygen to not only sustain life but also to thrive in it, it was as if the sound shinobi was adding fuel to the fire, literally. Like fire falling on oil or gasoline, the flame raced down the path of the oxygen and into the inner workings of the man's lungs. Burning the inside of the lungs was definitely one of the worst ways to go. It was akin to swallowing sulfuric acid, which, once ingested, disintegrates the lungs to the point of no return. If all that was bad enough, then it was just adding insult into the large injuries that he had sustained when he couldn't even move. This was due to the muscles getting heated up so much that they would simply not move. Seeing the death of all 3 of his comrades, the sound shinobi turned around to start going through a sequence of hand seals so that he could launch some thinly bottled retaliation. Unfortunately for him, Anko had already beat him to finishing the hand sign sequence as she released her arm in an outward direction right in his direction. Snake Clan's secret jutsu, Hidden Shadow Snake Hands. The flying snake went straight for one of weakest point in the human body. It went straight for the jugular vein in the neck. With purple-tipped fangs, it was no surprise when the moment that the fangs sank into the enemy's neck, there was an instant reaction. This was through the form of rapid convulsion before no movement at all. Waiting 5 seconds as the snake held the bite on for added effect, Anko desummoned the animal so that she could go about her mission. Catching up with a group of civilian women that she saw, Anko silently followed them in case they needed any form of protection. Luckily for their sake, they did not have anything that they had to deal with. When the group reached the safe zone, Anko made herself known to the terrified civilians. With their rather misguided view on ninjas, they thought that Anko had done all of the work from the shadows to protect them. The slight blush that accompanied the smile was hope for Anko and that she could maybe change the view of Konoha. Meeting up with Irika, someone who she had known since the academy, there was a look between the 2 as they silently questioned whether each other were ready for what was about to come. This was not so much personally if they were mentally ready, but more so if there were no more survivors outside that they had to search for. A slight twitch was all that was done, but it was enough of a communication between the 2 to allow the other to know their thoughts. Everything was okay and the second phase of the plan was ready to be commenced. Before that could happen, though, there was an untimely interruption as Konohamaru, who was running through the narrow corridors, bumped into Anko. With a strained smile on her face, the purple-haired lady waited until the kid scampered away before she did anything that she regretted. Finally, once all of the shinobi and kunoichi that were going to take part were ready, Irika set up a barrier seal so that it would take just that little bit extra for an Hokage shinobi to break in and have a field day. The moment the counterattack started and they were running out of the Hokage mountain, there was a question directed straight at her. "So Anko, why the hell did you allow the Kyubi Gaki to sign the snake summoning contract?" I thought you had more brains than to let the bastard even more powerful so he can turn on us. Shaken to her core as she pieced together what was thrown at her, she wondered how in the hell that Naruto had been the person to summon Manda. The last time that she remembered seeing the brat was when he did that amusing prank on the Hokage monument. To imagine someone like Manda who had a massive stick shoved up his arse, it was just laughable. Through past experience, the reason why Anko was never considered a full member of the Snake Clan was for one, she never received the tattoo, but more importantly, she did not have the personality that they demanded for her to have. They would have wanted for her to be the carbon copy of her sensei but in female form, and there was no way in hell of that happening. She had been betrayed by that man and she wanted to be as different from him as was physically possible. What the fucking hell makes you think that Naruto is the one who summoned Manda? Anko bewilderedly shouted as there was the small fact that the Naruto that she knew was the polar opposite of her former sensei. There was more chance of a snowflake surviving a Bijidama than there was of the Sandaime Hokage's pseudo-grandson joining the most hated traitor in the history of Konoha. It was just simply impossible for Anko to imagine Naruto being someone who would sign the snake contract. It was then that the dam broke on the emotions of Anko as she heard something that instantly made the woman fear for the future of Konoha. You might not remember it since you are much younger than what I am, but I clearly remember the feeling of the Kyuubi when it hit. Since I am able to sense chakra signatures, I can sense he too coming from over there. It was at this point that the older man pointed in the direction of where the fight between Manda and Naruto against the Ichibi no Shikaku. There are 3 massive chakra signatures in that area and only one of them is one that I remember. Easily, the most distinctive one is the one the giant sand thing. There is another big one coming from the giant snake, and finally, one that I will never ever forget sensing is the one coming from the Kyuubi. That means that the little demon is using its powers finally. Not even caring that she had a mission to do, Anko was rooted to the spot as she struggled to process the information going through her brain right at that point in time. The possibilities that this single statement could allow people to snowball their thoughts in an echo chamber. The only positive was that Naruto was fighting in between Konoha and the One Tail. Anko was not someone who was void of prejudging people. This was especially apparent when it concerned anything to do with her former sensei. She was going to get down to the bottom of this and find out how the fuck Naruto managed to sign the snake contract. Trauma had one hell of a way of affecting thought process and inserting bias into opinions. If Naruto was in connection with her former sensei, then she would kill him in the most painful way possible. Consequences of killing the Kyuubi Jinchuriki be damned. She was going to do that so that she could prevent the world from having to experience something even worse than her sensei. It would be fucking idiotic for allowing Orochimaru to poison the minds of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and get Naruto to do his bidding for him. It would spell the end for Konoha as she knew it, and she wasn't going to let that happen. She would give her everything until the threat of Orochimaru was defeated, even her life. XXX. It was not something that he liked to admit, but Neji Hyuga was feeling very alone right now. None of the people that he was in frequent contact with were here to even say hello. The white walls of the Konoha General Shinobi Hospital were a drab place that only served to remind the genin of what his life was like back at the Hyuga compound. Sure, Neji knew that there was a war going on, but using his Byakugan, he knew that the fight had been over for quite some time, and yet there was still no one who was willing to come say hello. The injuries that he had suffered at the hands of Naruto Uzumaki meant that he was not going to be leaving this place anytime soon. He was injured enough so that he was not allowed to move out into home care, but Neji was not injured enough that he required a medical ninja to heal him up quickly. It was obvious to the black-haired boy that there were people who had more important injuries for the medical ninjas to attend to. Speaking of the injuries that he had sustained, Neji was in a severe amount of pain as there were some quite decent-sized holes in his body. This was not to mention all of the cuts that he had acquired due to all of the wind chakra manipulation as well as futon ninjutsus. Crutches were necessary for the member of the Hyuga clan, but he was able to move around in his private ward. Being the nephew of the head of arguably Konoha's most powerful clan certainly had its benefits. The only place that Neji was able to walk to at a very slow pace was the toilet. Still, it was something that greatly reduced there being any loss in pride for the teenager. Before the prodigal genin could go into retrospective thoughts about the fight that he had just been were brought to a halt as there was someone knocking on his door. Still with the war fresh on his memory, before he even bothered to open his mouth to speak, Niji used his clan's trademark dojutsu to see who it was behind the door. The black-haired boy did not instantly recognize the person who is. It was certainly not Guy-sensei or even the small possibility of it being his uncle. The only redeeming quality was the fact that the man had a Konoha forehead protector with the symbol of their village etched onto it. Curious but also prepared for anything that could possibly go wrong, Niji was apprehensive when he spoke up. Thanks to his emotional control, it was not something that was projected through his voice. "Yes, you can come in." Stepping through the door, there was a man, roughly in his mid-20s, who had brown hair and black, slanted eyes. The forehead protector the man was wearing was one that Niji reckoned looked very similar to the one worn by the Nidaime Hokage during his reigning years. Apart from the forehead protector, there wasn't anything that was out of the ordinary for the man, as he was wearing the standard Konoha shinobi uniform with the Chunin flak jacket on top. All in all, he seemed like he was a very standard ninja. That was the image that Tenzu liked to portray. He didn't like being someone who stood out in a crowd. Knowing what should be done in a situation like this, Tenzu spoke up. "Hello Niji, my name is Tenzu and I hope that you are recovering well from the injuries that you have at the moment." Having been around enough high-ranking officials in the Hyuga clan, Niji knew that this was in essence a customary statement that was meant to break the ice on the conversation. Cordially, Niji replied with an emotionless face. He still did not know anything about the person in front of him and wasn't willing to give away any information. "Thank you for your concern. I am fine as of the moment, but it will still be a little while before I am able to return to home. May I ask why you wanted to see me?" With a slight smile on his face, the brown-haired man replied in kind to the genin. "I am proud to say that there were not as many casualties on Konoha's side as was first feared. Unfortunately, there was still a large number of casualties on the shinobi side due to Otogekure and Sunagekyure's initiation on us." Whilst this did not answer the question that Niji had asked, it did answer one that he had on his mind. As I am sure you know, bless his soul, one of the people to die in the invasion was the Sandaime Hokage. It was only due to the conditioning required to get to ANBU captain that Tenzu managed to keep his expression and tone neutral. He was the person who encouraged him to join the Shinobi Academy, and it was a choice that would pay dividends in allowing the orphan a way back into society. The bow of the head from his position in his bed from Niji was more formality rather than out of pure sorrow. Sure, he was saddened for the village, but because he did not know the man on a personal level. With his death, Konoha has been put into a state of severe precaution, and we need to increase the number of shinobi we have back up to the amount we lost very quickly. That is the reason as to why I am here. There was a slight widening of the eyes that the ANBU captain noticed before they once again settled into their normal look. "Now Niji, you might not want to hear this, but from the performances that you displayed during your fight, they were not ones that would merit promotion to the rank of Chunin." Hearing those words, Niji couldn't help but frown and internally criticize fate for having a hand in him not getting his promotion to the next level. Before you get depressed about that, thanks to the rather unique situation that we have been put in due to this fight, Konoha as a whole are going to have to lower their standards for Chunin. This is so that we can hopefully recover as fast as possible. This means that you are still in contention for receiving a promotion to the rank of Chunin. The smile that was on the boy's face was one that was small but still managed to convey all of his thoughts to the ANBU captain, who was an expert in reading people through solely their facial expression. It certainly did not hurt that Tenzu had Hayashi Hyuga as his Jonin sensei. The wood user was contemplating on what it was that he should say next. Thankfully Niji was the person who spoke next. "How far away am I from getting that promotion? Am I really that far that behind what is required for Chunin?" The questions that were coming out of the Hyuga prodigy were all valid in the eyes of Tenzu. To be honest, you are worthy of becoming a Chunin rank in terms of your combat abilities. It is the fact that when you are in a tough situation and you believe that it is fate that is against you, you believe that there is no hope and give up to fate. That is what is holding you back from becoming a Chunin. You need to have that belief in that whatever situation you are in, no matter how dire it looks at that point, that you are willing to fight all the way to the death to complete your objective. Hearing the words from this person in front of him who was obviously a shinobi stronger than he himself was, it made Niji think. The first thing that came to his mind was the fact that Naruto, someone who he had pegged as a person who would be overcome by fate, had defied it and then gone on to beat him in a fight. Knowing that Sasuke Uchiha was the Rookie of the Year and the way how teams were formed at the top end of the scale, Niji could easily deduct that Naruto was the dead last of his class. Judging by the others from that year's graduating class, Naruto had managed to improve at a rapid rate which he knew was not due to him being a genius. It was through hard work and determination. Just like his sensei and Rock Lee. I failed the graduation process a total of 3 times on my way to becoming a ninja, but you know what the one thing that stuck with me through this whole time? It was my determination to make a change for the better. That is what you lack. Nothing in life ever comes easy, and the things that you want the most are the things that you have to work the hardest to achieve. The statement from Naruto that he was willing to call Niji his friend was something that made Niji quite surprised. Even Rock Lee was not as forthcoming as wanting to call him a friend when he turned on cunt mode. Thinking about the words that came from both Naruto and this Tenza person, Niji was starting to think that maybe fate wasn't the be-all and all that he made it out to be. Maybe there was a chance for him to be able to find a way to get out of the place that fate had put him in and have a life outside of being a branch member. Just like the epiphany that he had during his fight against Naruto, Niji was having another big moment in his life as he decided that he could finally be his own person and not the whipping boy of the main branch. Seeing all of the thoughts that were going through the mind of Niji thanks to his facial expressions, the brown-haired man couldn't help but have a small smile on his face. The realization that Niji was coming to was one that Tenzo felt needed to happen before the next phase of his plan could begin. It seems to me that you are finally realizing what it means to hold the rank of Chunin Niji. This statement alone was enough for the Byakugan user to dislodge himself from his thoughts and turn his attention back to his guest. I am not sure whether you know about all of the possible ways for a genin to get promoted to the rank of Chunin. What I will tell you though is there is one way that affects you personally. A pin drop could have broken the silence between these two shinobi as the Hyuga prodigy was listening on intently as to what it was that he would have to do to get the rank. Pride was most certainly on the line at this point in time. For a genin to get promoted to Chunin outside of the Chunin exams, a jonin will have to put in a formal application for one of the ANBU captains to personally look into said genin's skills. The ANBU captain would then decide on whether or not they were worthy of the rank of Chunin by accompanying them on a mission from the shadows. The other way is for an ANBU captain to personally endorse a promotion of a genin where they will have to get the written consent from the genin's jonin sensei. All from what Niji was hearing, his instincts were telling him that the man in front of him was a member of the special forces and was a captain at that. It was never normal for a mere genin to be in contact with someone so high up unless they knew them before the position. It went to show just how much faith Tenzu was putting in the Hyuga clan member right at this point in time. Now Niji, I am good friends with Guy-senpai, and since the invasion we have had a chat about your future. It might surprise you, but when it comes to serious issues like this, but your sensei can be as serious to talk to as your uncle. In the end of that conversation, he agreed that if I could get a change in your opinion to one that was acceptable, then he would fully support your promotion to the rank of Chunin. From what I have seen just now, I know that you are a changed person and that you will do Konoha proud. Knowing exactly where this was leading to, the black-haired boy allowed for there to be a large smile on his face as he was confident that he was about to receive a promotion to the rank of Chunin. Indeed he was, as the ANBU captain in front of him spoke up. Niji, I am happy to announce I believe that you are qualified enough to have the rank of Chunin bestowed upon you. It wasn't necessarily the situation or the place that he thought that he would achieve the rank, but Niji could not deny for even 1 second that it didn't make the occasion any less special. Truth be told, being quite an antisocial person as he was, large events were simply not the type of situation he liked finding himself in. The taijutsu-based ninja could only imagine what it would be like if all of the attention was focused onto him. There was only one thing that was missing. That was that his team was not around to congratulate him in achieving this milestone. Just thinking of his team made Niji frown. Whilst he did not admit it ever, Team Guy was a constant in his life that he had become accustomed to having by his side. Guy-sensei and Rock Lee certainly did not have the greatest of personalities in anyone's eyes, but spending time with them, they had the personalities that grow on you and make you miss them when they are not around. Then there was 1010. She was the only presence on the team that he was able to speak to for more than 10 minutes without getting some form of headache. Before any more thoughts could be pondered on, Tenza spoke up as he had more pressing matters to attend to due to the state of the city. Now Niji, I would not have bothered to announce my presence if all I was doing was simply promoting you to the rank of Chunin. Konoha is in dire straits at the moment. I will not lie, things are looking pretty dire and serious if not unrecoverable damage could happen to Konoha if one of the other hidden great shinobi villages were willing to attack us. The village hidden in the leaves as a whole needs to rebuild fast. That is why I am going to offer you an opportunity that will allow you to serve your country as best as possible. I am willing to give you a 6-month trial of the training in being a Chunin before you join the ANBU. During this time you will be trained by me personally as well as some off-the-side training from some of the other ANBU operatives. You will be going on tougher missions more regularly and you will have a very substantial increase in your wages. Enough that you could work in the ANBU for 3 or so years and go back to being a Chunin and you could live the rest of your life quite comfortably. It took a while for Niji to digest all of this. It took even longer for him to think through everything that was presented to him. What would happen to my teammates if I did decide to do this? Will my team get disbanded? Whilst he was quite an arrogant arsehole at times, Niji did come to care for his teammates and didn't want to just abandon them. There was a smile on the face of Tenzu. Niji was displaying the true characteristics of being a Konoha shinobi. He was putting the needs of others before his own. Again, this is not something that you will want to hear, Niji, but I am going to have to be brutally honest with you. At this current point in time there is little to no chance of Rock Lee ever becoming a shinobi again despite all of the progress that he has made in this last year and a half. According to Guy-senpai, if he does not get the treatment that he needs within the next 2 months, then his career as a ninja will be officially over due to unfixable damage to his spine. It was a truly unfortunate injury to fall on someone who was so optimistic. There was a pause as Tenzu assumed that Niji was still dealing with the fact that his teammate was nowhere near the same in terms of personality. He was right. Then there is your female teammates 1010. You might think that she is good now, which she is, but with her style of fighting, 1010 will start to stagnate in the coming months, and if she does not add anything extra into her arsenal, she will completely stagnate in around about 3 to 5 years. There is only so much that you can do with ranged weaponry. In terms of potential, you are the only one at the moment who can go on to becoming someone who is a Jonin. That is of course unless Lee manages to recover from his injuries, but as of the state we are in right now, we do not get the time to wait and see. We must act decisively to ensure the best possible outcome for Konoha is attained. Niji, you have a lot of potential inside of you, and as harsh as it is, your teammates are only going to hold you back. Konoha needs all of the strong shinobi that it can get its hands on at the moment. With the training ending in 6 months' time, I can assure you that you will be at ANBU combat level. Tenza knew that it was a dick move saying that Konohagakure needed him to do this, but the fact of the matter was that the Mokutan ninja was not lying one bit with what he was saying. Konoha definitely needed a bolstering of their ninja forces, and talented shinobi who have the Byakugan were always needed. Finally, the one factor that could not be ignored was the money that being in the ANBU granted oneself. A genin received enough money so that it was the equivalent for a part-time job for a civilian. It was enough to live off with having to make sacrifices when going out a necessity, but it was doable. That was in contrast to the pay of a member of the ANBU Special Forces. The Black Ops provided enough of an income to compare that to a full-time civilian who had gotten a tertiary degree and had a high-paying job. It was enough that if you did not spend much of your money, within a year, you could have enough money to put down for a deposit on a small apartment. That was something that Niji was seriously considering. Despite the fact that he had had a recent change of beliefs, Niji still hated the fact that he had to live among the main house. If he ended up taking the position, then he would immediately be able to start renting once his first paycheck came in, and he would be able to live off of his own. Thinking about it a bit more, Tenza said that he would be able to decline the ANBU when the time come if his heart was still not into it by that stage. With that the last though going through his mind, Neji knew that whilst there was a little that he could potentially lose, there was so much more that he could possibly gain from this, and that made it too good to refuse. Okay, I have decided. I will take you up on your offer, Tenzu-sensei. Opening his eyes, Naruto found himself in a place that was not the hospital. Turning his neck, Naruto noticed that the bed that he was in either a double or queen-sized bed. This indicated that he was not in a place like a hospital or a clinic. The way that the room was laid out with the chest of drawers and a bedside table indicated to Naruto that it was more than likely he was in someone's private residence. This is obviously someone's house or apartment. When the door opened and someone walked inside, Naruto instantly recognized who it was. Jiraiya-sama. Naruto stated and did as best as he could. Given the situation that he was in, Naruto did his best to bow his head in recognition of such a powerful ninja. Unlike many first introductions that people had with Jiraiya, this one with his godson was a little more serious than what he would have liked. Unfortunately, due to the fact that Naruto had summoned Manda, there was no hope in hell that he was going to leave anything to chance. He wanted to find out all he could with Naruto and find out how deep his connection with Orochimaru was. Naruto Uzumaki, I must congratulate you on an outstanding performance in your fight against Gaara. That single fight was one that once the invasion started was originally intended for a veteran ANBU captain to fight. For a mere genin to be able to not only fight but also subdue a Jinchuriki with the use of his demon's powers is truly remarkable. You allowed many of our shinobi to focus on other fights, which significantly reduced our death count. You should be very proud of yourself. I know damn sure that I, your mother and your father are unbelievably proud of you. Naruto didn't know what to say. The fight with the red-haired shinobi from Suna was the first fight that Naruto had where he had to step up his game to the highest stage. There had been a lot of shinobi throughout history that when the clutch moment came, they could not deliver what was needed. This was not even mentioning the fact that Naruto had not even gotten such praise for a job well done. Sure, when he did things right for Team 7, he got praise from his sensei, but since he knew the man's personality, the praise was somewhat muted. That and the fact that Naruto did not know that Kakashi was almost as revered on the battlefield as Jiraiya was because Kakashi spent all of his glory days in the ANBU where the missions were classified. Had Naruto known the personality of Jiraiya beforehand, the way he acted, the praise might have been a bit different. Unfortunately, Naruto, there are more pressing things that we have to discuss. That is the manner in which you fought Gaara. Naruto could feel his heart rate quicken and he clenched his fists. He knew what was going to come. Of course it comes to this. It was going to be more of the same thing that came with being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He was in for more judgmental people throwing their opinions in his face whether they were warranted or not. The genin from Konoha assumed that the work that he did in defeating Gaara would be offsetted by the fact that he summoned Manda, who was heavily associated with Orochimaru. Seeing the darkening facial expressions coming over the face of Naruto, Jiraiya wasn't entirely sure what Naruto was thinking to make them come up. He had a fair idea though. Naruto, I am sure you know that I am more concerned about you signing the snake contract because of my former teammate. I just want to know how it was that you signed it. The great thing about being one of, if not the best spy in the entire world, was that it allowed you to be able to read whether or not people were lying. Naruto was moderately surprised and it showed on his facial expression. He had initially thought that he was going to be immediately questioned on what was happening with Orochimaru. Instead, Jiraiya-sama was asking questions about how he signed the snake summoning contract. What Naruto did not know was that Jiraiya too knew that there were multiple ways of gaining a contact to a summoning clan. Heck! He himself was one of the people who had the more unique ways of going about it. He did the summoning jutsu without any hand seals, without any contract, and landed in the Toad Realm. From there on it was history. I wasn't feeling my best as I had a mission that I would rather forget, and it made me realize that being a ninja wasn't as great as I had envisioned it to be. Waking up, I found a snake lying on my lap, and that is how my first contact with the Hibi clan came about. Naruto was purposefully not revealing any personal information Jiraiya could tell. Also, from the way that his chakra was feeling at the moment through his sensory jutsu, Jiraiya could tell that his godson was not lying. Thanks to the extensive work whilst being in Sage mode, Jiraiya was a great censor even if he was nowhere near as good as someone like say Inoichi Yamanaka. There was no chance to get too excited in that Orochimaru had not yet approached his godson. There was a chance that Orochimaru had sent the snake to get Naruto's trust. Jiraiya's musings were cut short when Naruto continued on speaking from where he left off. The snake then said that I had a lot of qualities that embody what they represent, like how I am ambitious in becoming the Hokage of Konoha for example. Jiraiya could certainly not deny that trying to become the Kana Hagakure was not ambitious. They said that the main reason that they wanted me to join their group was so that they can get rid of the image that has been cast on them because of Orochimaru. The people of Konoha hate him almost as much as the Snake Clan want him gone. With all of the deeds that he has been doing, he has been painting the clan in a bad light and they want him gotten rid of. Sure, some people might not think of them as nice people, but they are certainly not evil like Orochimaru is. Jiraiya could hear the muted passion coming from Naruto and knew that what he was saying was true in his eyes. His chakra signature was confirming that. A smile appeared on the face of Jiraiya as he was confident that Naruto had not been approached by Orochimaru but instead by Manda. The silver-haired man didn't know what he would do if his former teammate corrupted his godson. One thing that Jiraiya was concerned about was that Naruto had said that the Snake Clan was essentially preparing Naruto for a fight with Orochimaru. Jiraiya had seen the potential that Naruto had in him from the fight with Gaara, but Naruto was going to have to rapidly improve if he wanted to fight against Orochimaru. The very truth was that Naruto could have been lying about Orochimaru not contacting him. Jiraiya did not think that it was possible given his own skill in reading people, but it was definitely a possibility. What this meant was that Jiraiya was going to act as if he fully trusted Naruto whilst still monitoring the boy closely. Naruto, thanks. There are many people in Konoha who know what Orochimaru is capable of, me being one of them. It is very good that you are not in connection with him. I was just making sure that you weren't his apprentice. That would be very bad for Konoha. The unspoken threat was left hanging. Now, you might not know it yet, but because of all of the damage that you took when you used the Kyuubi's chakra, you have been unconscious for quite a long period of time. You have managed to be unconscious for 3 days in fact. The eyes of Naruto went wide as soon as he heard this because as far as he knew, the Kyuubi's chakra only healed him, he didn't know that it also hurt him. Seeing the expression on the face of Naruto, Jiraiya's theories in that the Snake Clan had not had a Jinchuriki as a summoner in at least a very long time became true. What this also meant that Jiraiya was going to have to be the person to deliver the bad news of the death of the Sandaime Hokage. It was still a sore subject for him to deal with by himself, and Jiraiya had no idea how Naruto was going to do with finding out that bit of information. Naruto, just in case you were lying about not admitting that you were not connected to Orochimaru, I had to put some seals on you to restrict your movement. So now that I am confident that you were approached by Manda and not my former teammate, I will release those seals. As Jiraiya said this, he put both of his hands into the bird seal and channeled chakra to complete the jutsu. The moment that happened, Naruto instantly felt as if a weight was taken off of him. The blonde-haired boy could now freely move his body. Well, as free as he could, considering the injuries that he still had. Naruto believed that he would now be able to walk around with crutches or some other way of helping him walk. Despite being previously immobile, Naruto knew that Jiraiya was doing the right thing for Konoha. If he was in the Sanin's position, Naruto knew that he would have done exactly the same thing to ensure that Konoha was safe. Now Naruto, I have heard you were pretty close with the Sandaime, so this might be hard for you to take, but there was a fight between him and Orochimaru. Hearing this, the blonde-haired boy certainly did not like where this conversation was going one bit. He knew that not everything could go his way in terms of the war, but he hoped that he wouldn't have to lose someone close to him. He had no idea what he would do if what he thought that Jiraiya was going to say was true. Unfortunately, Naruto predicted right, as there was no good information to come from the mouth of the silver-haired man. Naruto, I am not sure what the easiest way to say it is, but Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, died whilst fighting Orochimaru. The somber tone in which he said it was enough to make Naruto realize that this wasn't some cruel practical joke. Naruto knew that the bitter truth and that his pseudo-grandfather, one of the people who looked at him as someone other than the Kyuubi no Kitsune, was dead. No. No. That can't be true. He is the Hokage, the strongest ninja in the village. There is no way that he could have died. Naruto was definitely in denial. Had he been thinking things through, the genin would have remembered just how strong Orochimaru was. Anyone with that skill level as well as such a good shinobi brain meant that anything was possible. Looking to Jiraiya to find someone who might be able to deny what had just been heard, Naruto knew that his grandfather in all but blood was now not among the land of the living. It was slow, but the tears eventually started coming. Due to the better emotional control that Naruto now had compared to say 6 months ago, Naruto managed to stop himself. In the end, Naruto had very little amount tears coming out of his eyes before they eventually dried up. Naruto had learned from an early age that crying would get you nowhere in life. It was better to get up from the ground and push on to better things rather than just focus on the misery. Jiraiya, able to see the things that Naruto was going through, made an educated guess and that the blonde-haired boy was repressing his emotions. XXX. As Alul appeared, Jiraiya left so that Naruto could process his emotions around the Sandaime Hokage passing away. As much as the man was there for him when no one else was, the fact that he lied to Naruto regarding the Kyuubi for so long and why everyone didn't like him filled Naruto with a myriad of emotions. When Jiraiya came back, he brought food and the two of them sat down, with Jiraiya asking what sort of shinobi Naruto thought he was and what he wanted to be. At the moment I think that I am Chunin rank of a shinobi and my strengths are my kenjutsu and my ninjutsu. My main weakness is genjutsu. Jiraiya nodded, from the reports that Naruto was honest with his assessment of his shinobi skills. Many of genin were overconfident and bragged about their skills. In terms of what kind of shinobi I want to be in the future. I want to be a shinobi who is good without any weaknesses. I think that to probably make the most of my circumstances, which means that I will have to be a ninjutsu specialist. Jiraiya knew what he was referring to when he said circumstances, he was referring to him being a Jinchuriki. It was good to see his godson making the most of what was given to him by his father. Well, you are going to have time to work on that because I am willing to teach you something that will greatly help you as a shinobi. Still reeling from the knowledge that Naruto was never going to sign the Toad contract and the guilt that came with that, he knew that he couldn't teach Naruto that. Nor the Rasengan. The blonde did not need another close-quarter combat jutsu. He already had his blade and wind release. That was why Jiraiya had something else in mind for Naruto to learn. Judging by the way that Naruto fought from what he saw in the Chunin exams, Jiraiya had the perfect idea for Naruto to learn. Unfortunately, Naruto was a bit pessimistic as he wasn't in the best shape. But what can I do when I can't even walk? That is a very valid question, midget, but it does not matter. The grandiose tone that came from Jiraiya was one that made the eye of Naruto twitch. If there was one thing that Naruto hated being teased about from his childhood, it was the fact that he wasn't tallest of people for his age. Sure, the change in diet a few months ago greatly helped, but results in growing taller would not be seen until his next proper growth spurt hit. Naruto was starting to see that legendary shinobi also had personalities too. Little did Naruto know just how much of a distinct personality that Jiraiya truly had. In the end though, Naruto realized that he was going to get some personalized training from the same man that had trained the Yondaime Hokage. Who was he to say no to that? What he learned from Jiraiya in this short time he could take back to both Manda and Kakashi, and then he could improve from there. Taking his time, Naruto made his way over to where Naruto was sitting. Naruto sat down next to Jiraiya. The reason why it took him a while was because Jiraiya had told Naruto that they were going outside. What Naruto and Jiraiya didn't know was just how lucky they were at that very point in time. You see, Itachi and Kisame were running around looking for Naruto to see if they could get a quick and easy bijou capture after the events that had just taken place recently. They had not managed to find Naruto, which was severely pissing off the former Kirigakure ninja as he wanted some prey for Samahata to feast on. Fortunately for Naruto, he was staying at one of the safest locations in the whole of Fire Nation. Thanks to all of the money that he had due to the Ika franchise, Jiraiya had enough money to have multiple houses around the elemental nations. The houses that Jiraiya owned outside of Konoha all had anti-chakra sensor seals all throughout premises. These allowed Jiraiya the perfect way to relax and distress when starting a holiday. The thing was that Jiraiya needed a place to test the seals out in the first place. One person who wasn't so lucky about running into Itachi was Sasuke Uchiha. That though was exactly what the younger of the two brothers planned on. When he had found out that Itachi had been in Konoha looking for Naruto as well as putting his sensei into a coma, well, Sasuke was very angry at this point in time. The fight, if you could call it one, was more along the lines of a one-sided domination that ended very quickly. The end result was Sasuke lying incapacitated on the ground after the usage of the most powerful genjutsu in Itachi's arsenal. This was a sight that Madogai would find when he came searching for the Uchiha heir. Who knew, maybe Itachi was here for Sasuke and not Naruto? Naruto was unaware to all of this though, as he readily waited to find out what his new sensei was going to teach him. Naruto did not have to wait long at all to find out. What I am going to teach you is the art of handed ninjutsu. The moment that those words came out of the mouth of Jiraiya, Naruto's eyes widened. Once he learnt this, the blonde-haired boy realized that he wouldn't have to put his sword back in its sheath to use ninjutsu. This would mean that he would also have a form of defense when he was just about to go on offense. It would improve his shinobi skills. It was needless to say that the eyes of the blonde-haired boy widened. Even whilst injured, he was still going to get stronger, and that made Naruto happy, as his dream of becoming the Hokage of Konoha was not going down the drain. XXX. Naruto was not the only person who was getting training to become a better shinobi. The Hyuga prodigy felt that now he was going to start getting somewhere in his shinobi career. As harsh as it might have been to say, Neji did agree with what Tenza-sensei had said about his team. Whilst Tenten was certainly better than the other kunoichi for her age group, his cousin included, there was a significant difference in ability between himself and her. With the way that he was progressing in skill as well as the words of Tenzu about Tenten progressing slowly, that gap was only going to get even bigger. In a slightly different situation, Rock Lee, the difference in skill between the two was going to get even bigger. With the injuries that he had suffered from the damage dealt by Gaara, Lee was not going to be getting better anytime soon. Even when he did get better, his muscle atrophy was going to be so severe that it would take a long time for Lee to build up the muscle once more. Finally, if all that wasn't bad enough, by the time Lee got back up to the same level he was before the injury, Neji was going to be so far more advanced it wouldn't even be a contest. If Neji didn't want to stagnate as a shinobi, he was going to have to distance himself from Team 9. Gai-sensei was going to have to do a lot of missions for the recovering Konoha. It meant that unfortunately Neji was going to be thrown into the cold. Looking back on the offer that came from his new sensei, Neji had no regrets whatsoever with his decision to join Tenzu. Now that Neji had recovered from his injuries due to the wonderful work of the medical ninjas, the black-haired boy now had the all-clear to be able to train. Neji was excited for what was about to come. He did not have to wait long at all as his new sensei came into the clearing. Due to all of the duties that he had, Tenzu got to the point when he spoke up. Look Neji, there are a lot of ways that you can get better, but you will definitely improve much faster as a shinobi if you leave your pride behind. The scoff that shortly followed was one that not even someone as normally calm as Neji could hold back. The scoff wasn't that Neji thought that the Hyuga taijutsu was so great, it was that Neji thought that he didn't even have an issue with his self-confidence. The look that Neji gave Tenzu was one that the Mokuton user could see through in an instant. Having the head of the Hyuga of your sensei, the ANBU commander could see right through Neji after having spent so much time with his uncle. Tenzu knew exactly about the arrogance that the clan had concerning their taijutsu. For your training, you are going to stop training in your taijutsu for the next month. There was what Tenzu described as a look of horror coming on the face of his student. It was understandable, as it was what Neji's strong suit as a shinobi was. For his further development into a possible member of the ANBU Black Ops though, he was going to have to branch out into other areas of combat. You don't have to stop training in taijutsu for a whole month. You can do just enough to keep your proficiency, but the majority of your training will be focused on adding some long-range effectiveness into your arsenal. The Hyuga clan might be great when it comes to short-ranged combat, but you are pathetic when it comes to long-ranged combat. Why do you think that the majority of your clan only become special jonin and not actual jonin? It is because that your pride in your gentle fist prevents you from learning other things that will make you into better shinobi. Tenzu could see the apprehension on the face of Niji and decided to say one last thing to convert Niji into the thought process of not solely focusing on his jukin. Both your father and your uncle were two shinobi who don't rely solely on their taijutsu, and they were the two best shinobi that your clan has produced in a generation. If you ever want to reach their levels, you are going to have to stop limiting yourself. After hearing that his father and his uncle, two out of the three strongest people that he knew on a personal level, didn't rely had made up his decision. This was because he wanted to not only be the best shinobi that the Hyuga clan had ever produced, but he didn't want to disappoint his father. There were a lot of insecurities regarding anything that was not the gentle fist. It was something completely new and he hated being bad at something new. I want to become stronger. If that means that I have to learn something else, then I will do it to the best of my ability. As Niji said this, he couldn't help but hide the excitement in his eyes that all kids had when it came to learning something new about being a shinobi. Whilst the upbringing inside the Hyuga clan tried its best to make him grow up fast, unless you did something like what Danzo Shimura did to all of his root shinobi, then it was practically impossible to destroy a child's curiosity. Happy with the outcome, Tenzu knew the easiest way to get Niji to be a competent shinobi was to get him into some elemental ninjutsu. Elemental ninjutsu was very broad subject and had a lot of different ways for it to be used. It would greatly enhance the possibilities that Niji had in terms of fighting. I'm glad to hear that, Niji. Now the first thing that I need to do is channel some of your chakra into this piece of paper. I am sure that you know about the elemental affinities and what the good and the bad for each element are. Well, this piece of paper will allow for you and me both to find out what element you are attuned to. The words coming from Tenzu seemed straightforward to the Hyuga prodigy. Taking a hold of piece of paper from his new sensei's hand, Niji waited little time to find out what affinity he was attuned to. Since no one in Team Guy had any interest in learning about elemental ninjutsu, there was no reason for Guy to bother seeing what elements they had affinities to. Watching his hand, the black-haired boy noticed how the piece of paper turned into a gluggy brown substance, one that Niji would associate with mud. The realization followed very shortly afterwards as Niji realized that he had an affinity to the earth element. Seeing this firsthand, Tenzu was not too surprised. This is good, Niji, for I am also someone who has a Doton affinity. Now since I have other things that I have to attend to right now, so we will get started on your training. This was something that excited Niji as this was going to be something outside of his comfort zone of taijutsu and he was interested in learning new things. Alright, I want you to place your hands into the boar sign, channel some chakra and then place both of your hands onto the ground. From there you are just going to try and feel for any difference in the earth compared to when you do it without your chakra. The final thing that I doubt you will be about to progress that much before you run out of your chakra is trying to make some of the dirt rise out of the ground. XXX. What Niji lacked in raw chakra capacity, the prodigy of the Hyuga clan certainly made up for it in fine-tuned chakra control. High chakra control allowed Niji to quickly learn the tasks that he was tasked to do. Niji had placed his hands on the ground and tried to feel the difference that his sensei was talking about. Niji wasn't really sure what he was looking for. It was only when 1.5 hours had passed and the boy was at the depths of his patience did he notice it. From the extended use of chakra and slight exhaustion, Niji was able to feel the vibrations that were running through the ground. Coming back from yet another meeting that as an ANBU captain he had to attend, Tenzu came to the training ground where he had left Niji to figure things out for himself and was moderately surprised. He honestly did not think that this was something that the boy would have completed in such a short amount of time. It was clear to Tenzu that Niji was a shinobi who had a great deal of potential inside of him. The expectations placed on him and the title of genius being bestowed on him was not unfounded. Okay, Niji, the next thing that you have to do is try and channel your chakra to where the vibrations are occurring in the earth. What this will do is that it will force the vibrations to move the earth that is above the ground. You don't have to try and control them to move the earth in a certain way. All I am asking for is for you to try and make the ground move. We can look at doing something more technical later. Nodding in affirmation, Niji knew what he had to do and started thinking about how he would go about it. It was not even half a minute before he turned around to have a look at his sensei, only for him to notice that he was gone. There was a slight tick on the face of Niji. He was slightly angry with Tenzu, but there was nothing that Niji could do about it. Niji just wasn't used to the major difference in teaching methods that Gai-sensei and Tenzu-sensei had. It was then the slight pain coming from his stomach made the mind of the Hyuga prodigy go off on a tangent. Due to the kind nature of Gai-sensei, the man had been someone who would always bring lunch for all three of his students. Gai was a very hands-on teacher. Tenzu was not. He was the opposite. Both styles had their benefits. Once getting the food, the boy had to use his Byakugan to find his way back to where he was training. Hey! It was not his normal place to train, and it was the first time that he had even been there. Niji had a perfectly viable excuse for not getting there the fastest possible way. Having an hour lunch break, Niji got back to his training and put as much focus and intensity as what he would do when it came to his Hyuga Taijutsu and Hyuga Ninjutsu. 4 hours later and Niji was absolutely exhausted. He had spent all of his time and chakra on trying to do what his sensei had asked of him. Those 2 hours brought frustration to Niji as he quickly learnt that trying to control the vibrations going through the ground was much harder than he first thought. The main thing that the Hyuga prodigy cursed was the simple issue in that he didn't have enough chakra and had to use it very sparingly. The black-haired boy resolved that from now on, he would increase his chakra reserves. This was so that he could use future Doton ninjutsus that he learnt in combination with his taijutsu and his Hyuga clan jutsus. In the end though, the amount of fatigue that Niji was suffering from was worth it. The Byakugan wielder was successful in the task that he had set out to accomplish. Niji had managed to control the vibrations going through the ground and create a hole in the ground. It might have not been much in comparison to all of the potential that Doton jutsus contained, but for someone who was a first-timer, it was quite remarkable the amount of progress that Niji had made in one single day. It was a job well done in the eyes of Niji as he fell onto his back and stared at the setting sun. Whilst my original goal was to become better than the entire main branch by beating them at their own game, but now, thanks to Naruto, I don't want to be a caged bird to them. I want to be my own person. I want to be someone who isn't just another standard Hyuga. I want to be something more than that. Hopefully with this training in Doton, I will be able to improve to a much higher level than what I would have done being in that cage of broken dreams. As these self-reflecting thoughts of himself took place in his mind, the black-haired boy did not realize that there was someone coming. On reflection, he would have cursed himself as it could have been a possible enemy. Thankfully though, it was only his new sensei. Well, I must say you managed to do more than I expected from you. I am impressed with how quickly you picked this up. As Niji was getting out of the trance that he was in, there was a smirk of superiority that was etching onto his face as he was proud of what he had done. He didn't think that anyone else he knew would have been able to accomplish such a thing. Thanks to the talking with his sensei as well as Niji's sensei, Tenza knew that the Hyuga prodigy didn't need any more of an ego boost. I wouldn't hold that smile on your face for very long. Tomorrow is the first day with me being your sensei that I have off. This means that I will finally have a chance to see how good of a shinobi you really are. In conjunction, you will also have to replicate the same proficiency in Doton manipulation that you showed just then. Unlike your other senseis who have held back, I will not be holding back as much, so be prepared for some injuries. Doing his best, Niji tried to display his best poker face to and make it out as if he was not intimidated at all. That was not to be, however, as a veteran member of the ANBU Black Ops, Tenza knew how to spot a bluff. Like his commanding officer in the ANBU, the Mokuton user decided to instantly change the mood as he spoke up. Given the subject, it was prudent that there was a change in tone. XXX. How dare you? Ino called out, immediately running up to Naruto and slapping him in the face. The blonde-haired boy was at a loss, not knowing what had happened. Even more so confused when she wrapped her arms around him and gave him the tightest hug that he had ever received. Don't you realize how much I missed you when you got scooped by that old man? I was so tired that I couldn't put up a fight, and to see you so vulnerable getting taken away. Then you were gone without a trace for a week, without any way of being found. No chakra signature at all. I even asked my daddy to find you, and he said that you had no chakra signature. Do you know what that means? I thought you were dead. Seeing the tears that were threatening to break from Ino's eyes onto her cheeks hit harder than the tailed beast ball that Naruto received at the hands of Shikaku. He caused her to feel pain like that. During the fight he could feel the raw emotion she had, wanting him to be safe and come back alive. That she cared for him. More than anyone else had ever cared for him. I'm so sorry, Ino. Please, you have to believe me. I didn't want to make you sad. I'm not really used to having people care for me. I am used to being by myself. He panicked. The last thing he wanted was to lose someone close to him. Death would be kinder. Well, that shit has to change. You can't keep thinking that you're out here alone, 'cause you're not. You've got me. Still highly annoyed at Naruto, although her empathetic nature tried to imagine what it was like for Naruto growing up, having only himself to rely on. The anger that Ino was directing at him actually caused him to smile. It shows that she cares. If she didn't care, she would just stay silent. Said smile was not good for the genin, though, as it only served to infuriate the Yamanaka heir. What the hell are you smiling for? Do you like seeing me angry at you? Because I'll give you angry, you fucking asshole. It was probably not the best idea for the smile to grow even bigger. It shows that you care. Of course I fucking care, you arrogant piece of shit. Don't you? If the positions were reversed, would you care as much? Seeing the stunned expression on the face of Naruto gave her all the information she needed. No, I doubt you would, wouldn't you? Her hands were on the sides of her hips, waiting impatiently for an answer. I would too. I care a lot. I just don't know how to show it. I'm sorry, Ino, I really am. I'll make sure I am better next time. Naruto said, holding her shoulders and looking into her eyes. His heart was pounding. She looked unsure for a second before caving. The intensity of that stare. Oh my god. Humph, it better, she said with arms folded across her chest. Now come with me. There's something I have to tell you. I think I am onto some gossip. As she said this, Naruto blushed, his whole face going red as Ino softly grabbed one of his hands and led him to a training ground where there was no one else around. When they got there, Ino sat Naruto down before sitting opposite from him. She knew this conversation was going to be delicate. Naruto, what happened when you asked people if they knew who your parents were? She questioned with concern. She even reached out and held his hand. Immediately, alarm bells went off in his head, wondering why Ino of all people would bring up his parents or lack thereof. Why is she doing this? Answering truthfully, Naruto replied. Whenever I asked the Sandaime, he would just tell me that he didn't know. That they probably just died during the fight with the fox. A frown appeared on his face as he didn't like thinking about it. I think he was lying. Ino dropped the bombshell and watched how Naruto reacted. No, that can't be. Naruto replied back instantly, far too quickly to give it any meaningful thought. Too many times in the past he had questioned it. It hurt to think that someone close to him would have lied to him, especially someone that had just recently passed. Surely. There's no way he could have not known who the parents of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki were. The Kyuubi is such an important asset to the village. She grimaced as the words came out of her mouth. As much as she was right, it sounded foul talking about Naruto like that. Naruto started clutching the grass below and started taking in large breaths. Remember what we talked about before, Naruto. The best way for you to become the best version of yourself is to confront the topics that hurt. That way, you can learn and grow from them. When you were away healing, I was doing my own research. Naruto perked up when he heard this, then his eyes narrowed. What did she find? Has anyone told you looks similar to the Yandaime? Ino hesitantly questioned, knowing that this was going to be a sensitive topic. Unsure where this was going, Naruto replied. Some people commented it, and I even thought at one point that maybe he was my dad, when I was a toddler. Then when I found out that I had the QB sealed inside of me, that thought died, because what parent would seal a demon inside their child if they knew how hard their life was going to be? Plus, every time I asked the Hokage if he knew who they were, he said he didn't know. After asking enough times, I just gave up because not knowing was easier than getting disappointed. Naruto questioned out loud, looking up at the sky. It was something that he had long wondered. Of course, he had noticed the striking similarity of the man. How could he not? His room had a window overlooking the monument. But like every difficult and painful emotion that he was confronted with, Naruto buried those thoughts. It was easier to not think about it rather than hope for answers and be disappointed when he got none. That, and it meant he didn't have to confront any negative emotions. Whenever I was angry and it showed, the looks I got were more intense. Ino had those same thoughts. She could see what was going through his head. In her psychology textbooks, she had read all about dissociation disorders, where a person would disconnect from their emotions, making it easier to cope with trauma. Her heart went out to him, yet again finding more depth in the blonde that she never knew existed 6 months ago. It was written all over Naruto. He deserves to have people care about him and help him out. He deserves to know who his parents are. That was what Ino told herself. I think he is your father, and I think I know who your mother is as well. Ino firmly mentioned, looking Naruto in the eyes, who drifted his attention back to her, laser-eyed focus given to her. You're like my best friend Ino, but don't joke with me on this. Please. Please. Whilst Naruto tried to come across as forceful, the last please came out as a cry. She ignored Naruto calling her his best friend externally. Her psychologist's mindset saw that as Naruto not having many connections. He's so vulnerable right now. I just want you to know, Naruto, that no matter what, I am by your side forever. It doesn't matter how you process your emotions, I am not going to judge you. Promise? It sounded a lot more frail than he intended. Promise of a lifetime, she said with the utmost certainty. There was something about the blonde that just made her trust him implicitly. That he would always have her back through thick and thin. There was a bit of a LUL in the conversation before Ino brought it back. Look, don't judge me for what I did, but I kind of committed a crime. She giggled that made Naruto question, just what has she done? So when I was younger, I had been fascinated by the yandere. He was everyone's hero after all. To which Naruto nodded. I always wondered about his love life, and I remember my dad telling me something along the lines of there was a girl that he always spent time around. He left it at that, and I soon got a crush on Sasuke, so I didn't look into it further. Ino's father is Inoichi. He's the clan head of the Yamanaka clan. He's probably the same age as the fourth and also around the same age. He probably knows him personally. Naruto questioned as he put the pieces together. That was, until your fight, Naruto. You know how there's all those paintings of the yandere standing on top of the toad and staring down at the fox? He nodded immediately. Of course he did. He had fantasized about those drawings for ages. Well, when I was watching your fight, standing on top of the snake, it looked the exact same. Exact same. She repeated herself for emphasis. Sure, but that's a bit of a stretch. Don't you think? Well, then I looked back at the Hokage monument and saw the fourth's face in his. I swear you to look identical. You have the same eyes, same eyebrow structure, same jaw structure, same hair color. There was just too much that was similar. Unaware that Naruto was struggling to keep up as his natural desire was to dissociate, Ino continued on speaking. So with new motivation, I went to the library and may or may not have used a family jutsu combined with a genjutsu on the receptionist for all of the information on the yandere Hokage and the lady he was with quite frequently. And do you want to know what I found? As much as this was about Naruto and finding out who his parents are, Ino was also excited to share what her detective skills had found. What? Naruto questioned. Up until this point he still didn't believe what Ino was saying. Her name is Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto went still at the mentioning of the lady's last name. That last name was too much of a coincidence. No. No. It can't be. Ah! Naruto screamed, clutching his head. His heart sank into his stomach and his heart rate was beating the fastest it ever has. No, why would he do that? Why would he seal the QB inside me? Am I all just some kind of tool for the village? Naruto started crying, and it wasn't the regular crying. It was the ugly crying where you blow bubbles from your mouth and snot dribbles from your nose, that no matter how much you wipe with your sleeve, it's still there. Tears freely formed and fell down his whiskered cheeks. Anguish and guilt filled Ino. Did I do the right thing? She questioned, second-guessing herself after seeing the reaction to Naruto. In the end her resolve deepened with one thought. He deserves to know. If I was him, I would want to know who my parents are. In a movement that shocked Ino to the core, Naruto channeled the Kyuubi's chakra into his hand and punched a tree, leaving a sizable divot in it. Having also researched more about Jinchuriki when she found out from Naruto that he was one, she moved over, hesitant due to the visible Kyuubi's chakra, and wrapped him in a hug. This doesn't change a thing, Naruto. I am still going to be by your side, no matter what. It doesn't change anything? It changes fucking everything. My whole life I have been lied to. All I ever asked from the Sandaime was who were my parents. He knew the whole time and lied. To my face multiple times. Kakashi is the fucking Yondaime student and he taught us the bare fucking minimum. I don't even know anything about Jiraiya, who was my father's sensei. So many people fucking knew and they have all done the absolute least amount of effort required. At this point, Naruto started sobbing yet again, feeling utterly worthless. Am I not good enough to deserve love? Why do all these bad things keep happening to me? In that moment right there, Ino Yamanaka's heart shattered. Seeing the boy she was starting to crush on crying his heart about, feeling worthless and that he didn't deserve affection or love destroyed her. Fuck 'em all. How dare they? Naruto has always gone above and beyond for those around him. All he wanted was friends at the academy and tried to make people happy. Her heart was wrenching inside of her chest, screaming out to her. Acting on instinct, she reached over and hugged Naruto and started crying herself. Hearing Ino cry, Naruto looked up. Why are you crying? Don't pity me. Naruto weakly called out through the blubbering mess that he was. Her emotions were consuming her. I am not pitying you. I am crying with you. I can feel your energy and it hurts. I don't want you to go through this alone. Naruto merely started crying even more, embracing hug and squeezing Ino as much as he could. Careful, Naruto. She called out with a giggle, wiping her stray hair behind her ear. Thank you for telling me everything. You have no idea how much this means to me. Naruto murmured as he stared into her eyes and curled the hair on the other side behind her ears. Unaware of the huge blush that was quickly forming on her face, Naruto acted on instinct and leant forward, pressing his lips softly onto her own. He held her cheeks softly, like they might break in his hands. Her lips are so soft. Is this what an angel feels like? As much as he didn't want to, Naruto broke off the kiss before he quickly kissed her on her exposed forehead, still hugging her cheeks. The duo let the moment run its course and they just stayed there, by themselves, embracing their first kiss. You better be my boyfriend, you hear me? Ino declared via humor. No one is getting between us. If this is what love feels like, then no one is taking him away from me. I would be honored, as long as you'll be my girlfriend.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.